On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, some draft talk, baby. One of my absolute favorite pre-draft guys declared for the NBA draft on Monday. We'll talk about him and his potential fit at 19. Plus, Stefon Castle, Donovan Clingan, two national champions, could be there in the top 6 if the Raptors keep their pick. But are the fits right? We'll get into all that coming up on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, May the 1st. Holy crap, it's May. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us on the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Great place to come hang out, talk ball. The playoffs have been fantastic. Lots of fun talking about old pals, OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam. Bobby Portis kind of took it to him last night, but that's okay. We still love Pascal. You should still love Pascal too. You can come and love Pascal and all of the other people on the Toronto Raptors and in their universe who you like in the Discord. Come hang out. Link in the description. Free to join as always. A great little family we got building around the show. We'd love to have you join our family at this exciting time of year. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Always appreciated when you support the show, however you decide to support the show. It's free to do. We don't ask for much over here, so subscribing, telling a friend, going to the YouTube channel, of course, and subscribing. Hit the notification bell so you get a heads up every single time the show goes live or premieres. All that is stuff you can do to help support the show, stroke my ego, help the algorithms, make me feel so good about myself. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. All right. On today's show, digging into some more draft stuff. I'm actually kind of getting into the groove with the draft stuff this year. I think people who listen to this podcast know me to be a draft skeptic, but it's fun to kind of dig into these guys. As sort of flawed as this year's class is, some interesting guys to watch, and I think a really sort of fascinating set of players when it comes to the general philosophy of how to draft, fit versus talent versus positional need, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's going to be a sort of through line of the lead up to the draft for the Raptors in particular. Today, we're going to dig into a couple of guys who might be there in the top 6 for the Raptors, teammates in the national champion UConn Huskies, Donovan Clingan, the 7'2" center, and Stefon Castle, the 6'6" guard wing hybrid guy. We'll talk about them while there still is the possibility of the Raptors picking top 6. Of course, the lottery is 11 days away, and we'll actually know. In the meantime, we're going to talk the hell out of the guys who might be there for the Raptors if they keep their pick in the top 6 while we have the chance. But off the top, I want to get into a bit of sort of declaration news from this week that tickled me a little bit, because one of my favorite guys in the lead up to this draft declared officially that he would be entering the draft pool. And that is Tristan da Silva, the 6'9", kind of do-it-all forward out of Colorado. 4-year college player. I guess he had another year of eligibility if he wanted it because of the whole COVID thing, but he decided to forego that and enter the NBA draft at kind of the last possible minute. It was a little bit of a up in the air question as to whether or not Da Silva was going to declare, along with his teammate Cody Williams, who we will talk about probably on tomorrow's show, actually. So keep an eye out for that. Might be double dipping on episodes tomorrow because we missed Tuesday. But either way, let's get into Tristan da Silva. To me, I really, really like this player. He's just, to me, he projects as like a high-end connective tissue type of guy. Not crazy super upside. He's not like the most fantastic athlete you've ever seen or anything like that. But I just think the combination of shooting, the combination of playmaking, knowing where to stand, one of my favorite things that a player can have, especially coming out of college. Again, connective passing, a little bit of on-ball juice to make stuff happen. Size at 6'9". I am a big Tristan da Silva head, and I think for me in this range of the draft, he's going to probably be somewhere in the 15 to 30 range of the draft. My guess is he does not get to 31 with the Raptors' second pick there, or third pick, depending where they end up in the top end of the lottery. Just because he feels like the kind of guy that contenders are going to be frothing at the mouth to try to acquire in the draft, because he feels like a ready-made drop him into your lineup. He can be a contributing role player kind of right away. He's on the older end of things, obviously a 4-year college player, probably closer to a finished product than a lot of these other guys, but there's a lot in that finished product that's very exciting for a team that needs some connective tissue, for a team that needs some shooting. And those are two things I think the Raptors definitely need here. I think of all the guys in this range of the draft, we'll talk about some other wings. We'll talk about Jalen Tyson. We'll talk about, a couple other dudes in this range of the draft in sort of the wing class who might be able to jump in and play right away. But I do think Tristan da Silva is probably the guy in this grouping of wing types who stands the best chance of pulling something like a rookie OG Anunoby, a rookie who happens to kind of snag a starting gig sometime in his first season with the Raptors. I think his potential fit between RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes is really, really glove-like. He's, again, 6'9". He elongates that lineup a little bit, pushes Barrett to the 2. I'm not saying this is going to happen. Obviously, we don't know what the Raptors are going to do this summer with Gary Trent Jr., what the plans are going forward there. But because of all of the sort of mature elements of Da Silva's game, I think there is a real chance that if he were to be taken by the Raptors, we could look up halfway through the season and say, oh, God, Tristan da Silva started like 15 games. What's going on here? And I think that would be good. I think that's nice. He's, to me, a guy who's going to have a long NBA career. And he just, I think people who listen to this podcast know, for me, I just love dudes who know how to hoop, know how to play team basketball. He seems to be able to do that. Listening yesterday, a really informative episode for Raptors fans' interests of Locked On NBA Big Board dropped yesterday with Leaf and Rich. Rich, of course, was on this pod a couple weeks ago. We'll try to get Leaf on as well because Leaf knows what the hell he's talking about too. But they were talking about these sort of unique wings in this tier of the draft and like lots of varying skill sets and, a lot of eye of the beholder stuff with who you like the most. Both agree that Tristan da Silva is a pretty interesting guy who's going to have a long NBA career, who's going to be there. And I think, I think the range of where they have him is anywhere between like 25 and 30. I think both said they're probably going to move him up by the time the draft comes. But yeah, I think the consensus on him is that he's just someone who's going to play a long time. The defense is not incredible. Like, he's a good off-ball defender. He's got good instincts, knows where to stand, but the on-ball defense might be the sort of limiting factor on his overall upside. It's not going to be like sieve defense. He's not going to get blown by all the time, but he's also maybe going to have trouble sort of being that prototypical wing lockdown defender type. And so, that's a fair concern, but I think in general, you got to be drafting for shooting. You got to be drafting for connective skills, stuff that's going to fit into a Darko Rajakovic scheme. Not everyone's going to be an incredible defender. There will be plenty of chances in this draft. This is why I'm so keen on them using all of their picks on wing prospects just to see who pops. You get a blend of shooting, you get a blend of defense, you get a blend of on-ball creation, all that stuff. And the point they made about Da Silva that really, I think, hammers home why I'm excited about him is that he's done it all at Colorado. He has been the main guy on the ball. He has been a connective second option guy. He has been more of a role player there to do catch and shoot stuff and space the floor. And he's done it all very well. He can kind of mold between different roles and niches. And that offers like a lot of different ways that he can slot in and eventually find his NBA niche. There seems to be a lot of avenues for him to kind of sneak into lineups. Leaf as well, Leaf Tulane on the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast talked about how, Da Silva's shooting is kind of the thing. If you just look at him as a shooter first, it gets really exciting because he can do a lot in terms of, catch and shoot stuff, a little bit of pull up juice, off the ball movement, stuff like that. There's that. If you kind of then layer in all the other skills that he has, the on-ball juice he has as a creator getting downhill, the passing chops, stuff like that, like all of that amplifies him as a shooter as well and makes that shooting an even more dangerous weapon. I'm pretty intrigued by Tristan da Silva, man. I think right now, given my druthers, he'd be the pick at 19 if I had it my way. And, we'll see. Obviously, things change. If you don't get that top 6 pick and you want to maybe take a bigger swing play at 19, I get it. But actually, I think my preferred thing there is if you don't get the top 6 pick, I would much rather Da Silva just be a guy that you take knowing, okay, like we didn't get the top 6 pick here, but we got a guy who we know is going to be an NBA player. And that is why I'm pretty keen on what Da Silva can do for this team long term if they were to take him. He's just going to be an NBA player, high floor type of guy. And, if you keep the top 6 pick, the guys that you're taking in the top 6, Ron Holland, Matas Buzelis, Zachary Ricochet, like those guys are upside plays. Those guys are swings. And so you kind of balance the upside, low floor, crash out potential versus the high floor, going to be a long-term NBA role player pick at 19. And I think you can make the argument that Da Silva's the pick there in that case as well. I'm pretty keen on, no matter what the situation being, Da Silva, if he's there at 19, I would be pretty overjoyed if he was taken by the Raptors. He feels like he's going to be a pro at, 4-year college shooter, 38.6% over his career, 39.5% on nearly 5 attempts a game this past season. Again, the defense is the question mark, on ball at least, but I think everything else he brings screams Darko Rajakovic Raptor to me. We'll come back on the other side, get into a couple guys who will surely be there in the top 6 in some way, shape, or form. Maybe they don't go all the way to 6, but if the Raptors jump up, they will have the option of taking them. 2 guys who played together in the national champions, Donovan Clingan and Stefon Castle. We'll talk about Donovan Clingan coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. And look, moms are a gift, so give your mom the best this Mother's Day. Get gifts as thoughtful as she is with DoorDash. Select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to the best of tech to self-care essentials and more, delivered right to her door. I'm someone who lives kind of far away from my parents. It's a bit of a hike to go see them, so I'm probably not going to see them Mother's Day, but a thing I can do is order DoorDash and send it right to my mom's front door to let her know that I'm thinking about her. I've done this before. I've ordered her meals. I've ordered her flowers. It's a lovely little way to show, hey, I'm thinking about you, Mom, even though we are very, very far apart distance-wise. Shop with savings that would make her proud with a Dash Pass membership. You'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees apply. Terms apply there as well. Either way, go get your Mother's Day gifts all in one place at DoorDash. Get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. You order using DoorDash today with that code LOCKEDONNBA. Terms apply. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in North America, and it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. You throw a little money down, you win with just $5, and you are going to get $150 in bonus bets into your account to play with. That's $150 to put on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. I'm not sure how many Maple Leafs fans there are out there. I know the Raptors and Leafs fans have a bit of a tete-a-tete at times. I'm a Leafs fan because I'm a sucker. And look, they won Game 5 last night. They're almost certainly going to win Game 6 and lose in Game 7. You can make money on those inevitable outcomes by going over to FanDuel. Don't take that as a final word. Of course, they could actually lose in Game 6 or win Game 7. Really? I don't see it happening. But if you want to, at least have the happiness hedge and make some money if your buds lose, you can go and do that over at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Back at it here, talking about UConn, guys. As we leave the Tristan da Silva fawning behind for today, there will surely be more of that to come in the weeks and months ahead of the 2024 NBA draft. Let's get into Donovan Clingan, shall we? 7'2", 7'7" wingspan, 280-pound center out of UConn, was the defensive anchor of the national champions this past season. And I guess the sort of big thing on him is he's enormous. He's a massively huge dude who naturally was a big-time riser up boards as the tournament went along, and he shut down opposing drivers with just like a level of menace that you don't often see in the NCAA tournament. Like, it was just like a really, really impressive high-end tournament from Donovan Clingan. Very good stuff, and improved his draft stock significantly in doing so. The type of player he is, he's, I would say, a paint-bound center is the best way to put it, kind of on both ends of the floor. On defense, he's going to be like a drop, pick, and roll defender. Massive rim protection upside, obviously, with that 7'7" wingspan and the 7'2" frame. He's going to be a natural deterrent, just kind of hanging out there. A really great breakdown that I pull a lot of my sort of thoughts and opinions out of and sort of react to from Hoop Intellect, one of our faves. He's probably going to be on the podcast sometime soon. Our guy Keandre over on YouTube does, I think, for my money, the best scouting videos in the game. Had a really great breakdown of Donovan Clingan that dropped just a week ago. And he kind of went into a lot of the stuff that makes him an interesting prospect and also makes him a guy who I don't think the Raptors can really justify taking. Ultimately, the calculus for me on a big man with their own first round pick, if the Raptors keep it, is that it has to be an upside play. It has to be someone who makes sense as like the long-term succession plan to Jakob Poeltl. And I frankly think it's got to be someone who now offers a little bit of stylistic variability, a way to play differently than the Raptors currently play with their bigs. Like, I don't think there's any doubt the Raptors need some big man insulation for Jakob Poeltl. You know, they can't afford to have him go down again and just have everything on the team fall apart because he's so essential to what they do on both ends of the floor. And so I could understand the argument of getting someone who is similar to Poeltl in style and dropping him in there as the backup. But I do think just having different looks to throw. They have Poeltl under contract for 3 more years. There's no rush here to go and find the succession plan for him. Yes, it'd be nice to get a nice high upside big in the house. And I think there are some guys in this class who kind of fit that bill. But I think those guys maybe come a little bit later in the projected draft order than Donovan Clingan, who is, again, projected to go very easily top 10, potentially as high as top 5. And I just don't know if I feel quite comfortable with the Raptors using what will be a prime draft pick on a guy who is going to be blocked by a couple of bigs on the team who are under contract and just doesn't, to me, have the clear upside of a guy who is going to no doubt kind of like last season of Jakob Poeltl's, contract with the Raptors, grab that starting job and say, hey, it's mine, Jak, go to the bench, and everyone's happy about it. I don't quite see that for Clingan. It's actually interesting. Keandre over at Hoop Intellect did say that one of the comps for Donovan Clingan is Jakob Poeltl. Although I think Jak is a lot more mobile than Clingan is. I think, even back to, I remember scouting Jakob Poeltl back in 2016 before that draft and really liking how mobile and quick with his feet he was. I don't think Clingan has that. He's pretty slow, and he didn't burn him that much in college. But I do think when you get to the NBA, there's more space, there's more pull-up shooting threat all over the place. It's kind of what the league is built on at this point. Just kind of imagining Donovan Clingan getting like rained upon by Tyrese Maxey in games against Philly, for example, having just watched what Maxey did last night to the Knicks, same as like Jalen Brunson. Like, look, this is what it is. Pull-up guards are the wave in the NBA, and you got to have bigs who can sort of corral those types of players and deter those pull-up opportunities. And I just don't know if Donovan Clingan has the foot speed, the mobility to really do that at the NBA level. Obviously it's a lot more cramped in college as well. I just think with like better athletes, more space, more shooting threat, the mobility issues for Clingan could be kind of a problem. And I think if they're going to take a big, it's got to be someone who's switchable. It's got to be someone like Yves Missi, for example, out of Oregon, Baylor. I get those two confused because they're the same colors and jerseys. But either way, Yves Missi out of Baylor, he's got that sort of switchability, high upside defensive ceiling that, it's not that Clingan doesn't have a high defensive ceiling, but it's kind of a similar ceiling to Jakob Poeltl, where it's sort of paint bound rim protection, probably matchup based and matchup dependent. There are going to be times where he just can't play. That's on top of the fact that he just couldn't play a whole lot anyway at UConn. He averaged 22 minutes a game this season, 13 minutes a game the season prior. He's just like a big dude who, I think kind of gets gassed quickly because that's what happens to big dudes. And at the NBA speed, I think that could be a problem as well. Like, are you drafting a guy in the top 6 who can maybe play half a game for you? That's trouble. He's had some foot stuff as well that he's dealt with, some foot strains and things like that. So I think for me, Clingan doesn't quite make sense for what the Raptors need at the moment. Again, he's not going to be a switch big. He doesn't offer stylistic versatility or variability. And his offense, I do think there's like a pretty serious cap on what he can do. He's not going to be a 3-point shooter. He's, attempted a couple of cursory attempts in college, but nothing serious. And, he's going to have a very similar offensive profile to Jakob Poeltl, right? Where Poeltl is roll gravity. He's finishing around the rim. He's offensive rebounds. That's going to be a very similar thing with Clingan. He's got a little bit of passing juice to him that sort of that Hoop Intellect kind of outlines in the video, and that he's sort of flashed a little bit in spurts here and there. But I don't think it's quite the level of Jakob Poeltl's passing where you can actually like run a lot of your offense through him at the elbows. Probably not doing that with Clingan because he doesn't quite have the sort of juice to, have those keeper plays that Pirtle has the, little dalliances with and things like that. I just think he's a little bit slow. I think his offensive upside is not incredibly high. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Walker Kessler in that, I know everyone loves what a crazy good defensive player Walker Kessler is, but it's hard to make a player who's got such limited offensive chops work without uber shooting around them. And the Raptors don't have uber shooting. They have some shooting. They don't have uber shooting just yet. And so I think the fit would be tricky for Clingan as well, and it'd be hard to maximize him. So for me, he feels extremely like a Memphis Grizzly, like the Steven Adams replacement for Memphis that they clearly need and want. Maybe he's someone that, a team wants to trade up for if they really feel like they need that rim protection element. The Thunder, for example, we know are a team that maybe could use a little bit more beef and heft in the front court behind Chet Holmgren, although he's holding up pretty damn well in the playoffs on his own anyway. And so maybe they do the thing where they use their store of picks to trade up for a guy they really like. That could totally happen. And this plays back into I think the Raptors should trade back at all costs if they're in the top 6 and not the top 1, take that I think I'm working on here. And so, yeah, to me, doesn't feel like the pick for the Raptors this high. I get the interest in the defensive upside. I just don't think there's enough in terms of differing skill sets to be like, okay, we're going to throw out the Jakob Poeltl next 3 years and go get this guy who's going to be the long-term, center of the future. I don't think Clingan profiles as that. And I would much rather save these picks, either trade back and get more stuff or use them on wing prospects, because wings are in such dire need on this team, even more so than a third big, I think. So that's kind of where I'm at there. On the topic of wings, Stefon Castle. Is he a wing? Is he a guard? What the hell is he overall? We'll get into him coming up in just 1 second and his potential fit as we round out the show. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. And look, I love Monopoly. I've told you this. I absolutely adore the game. My family thinks I'm crazy because I want to play it all the time. I've told the story as well. I'm such a tyrant when I play with my wife and her parents that we're only allowed to play on February 29th every 4 years. Yes, Leap Day is when we get to play Monopoly. It's very fun. It's a cool little ritual we have, but I got to fill those 4 years in between. I can't be on an Olympic cycle for my Monopoly games, and Monopoly Go is a wonderful way to fill those gaps. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. You can get unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces with travel boards or to travel boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, wrapping up today's show with a look at Stefon Castle, one of the key members, of course, of that UConn national championship team, and someone who's being projected all sorts of different places in various mock drafts. I think Kevin O'Connor has him as his number 1 guy on his board, or recently updated number 2 on his board over at the Ringer. Very highly projected for him, kind of in that top 10 range, basically anywhere you look. And I think at the very outset of this process, kind of digging into him for the first time, I was pretty high on Stefon Castle. I think my eagerness to see the Raptors take him has dissipated a little bit over that time. And it's not to do anything with like him as a player. It's kind of similar to the Ron Holland thing we talked about last week, where I do think fit really matters when you're building around this current Raptors core. Once again, this is not a classic rebuilding team. The Raptors have who they fancy their key pillars already in-house. Scotty Barnes is going to be the guy. Emmanuel Quickley is going to be a number 2 or a number 3 on this team, I think, for the next 5 years, and that's very exciting. RJ Barrett is here, and he's looking awesome. They have these pieces in place, and while you want to find high-end talent, you also got to find players that complement those players, because you know that those 3 guys are going to be the ones who are driving a lot of the play. And so with Stefon Castle, that's where my biggest hang-up is. I think the fit situation, he's not quite a can't miss enough prospect for me to overlook the fit. 6'6", 6'9" wingspan, guard / wing. Of course, out of UConn, like he has like a pretty decent physical profile. But I think there's overlap with RJ Barrett. I think there's overlap with Scotty Barnes in terms of what they like to do with the ball. And to me, maybe if he's the best guy left on the board, you take him if you deem him that. But I do think the fit concerns are very real. Like, he's a very reticent 3-point shooter. Took just 2.2 attempts a game this season at UConn, hitting only 27% of them. Just not looking to shoot threes a lot. Listen, I checked out a Floor and Ceiling, another YouTube channel that does videos on these guys talking about his 3-point shot. I kind of disagreed with what they had, as like they thought his shot was like pretty nice and sound. To me, it's like a very slow loading 3-point shot. Don't love the way it looks. Again, I'm not a shot doctor or anything like that, and he's certainly not like Ryan Dunn, who can't shoot at all. But I don't love the 3-point shot, and the comp that was thrown out on the Floor and Ceiling video I watched, and go check out all these wonderful draft people. They're the smart people who do this. I just take what they say and, riff my own opinions off of what they say and analyze it. But Floor and Ceiling, they had an interesting comp to like Scotty Barnes, the Thompson twins, Ben Simmons as the sort of comparable for Stefon Castle right now. And I just think with that, the issue there is those guys are all like otherworldly athletes. Don't think you'd say that about Stefon Castle. Like, he's a pretty good athlete, not an incredible, like, jumped out of the gym athlete like Barnes or the Thompson twins or early days Ben Simmons was. And so it's harder to kind of overcome the lack of shooting. Those other guys figured it out in their own various ways, but the lack of shooting is very real. And I just think you have to have shooting on this basketball team. Like, they already have Jakob Poeltl, who's a non-shooter. I do think as much as RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes had really promising stretches of 3-point shooting this season, those aren't sure things. Those are question marks to me going into next season as to how viable their 3-point shooting is. And so I think you have to be very smart about the players you fit around those guys and ensure that you're prioritizing shooting. I just don't know if Stefon Castle brings enough projectable high upside shooting to really make it work on this Raptors team. Again, he needs to have the ball in his hands to be successful. You're not going to want him with the ball in his hands when you have Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickley and bigs who are nice and creative as well. I think there's overlap with how he plays. He loves to just kind of barrage to the rim. We know RJ Barrett loves to barrage to the rim. What was one of the issues with RJ Barrett in New York? Just too many guys who like to do the same things as him. And so I think the fit with Stefon Castle is tricky. To me, he doesn't bring the size to beef up the BBQ trio in the way that you'd like. He doesn't quite push RJ to be in the clear 2 like you'd, I think, like to see in an ideal situation. And I don't think he, as much as he's projected as a very good defender, and like that's the sort of the sweet spot of his game, is that guy's a maniac defensive player. He tries extremely hard. He is great at the point of attack. Like, that is a really nice thing. I just think the size, having, everyone 1, 2, 3 being 6'6" or under in today's NBA, it's tough to square. Like, you got to be lengthy. You got to have arms. You got to have as much size and length as possible to really hang in today's NBA. And I don't know if I totally see it. If RJ Barrett had his defense, what an unbelievable thing that would be. If Stefon Castle had RJ Barrett's sort of knack for getting downhill and finishing at the rim, on top of the sort of cursory 3-point shooting he offers, that would be fantastic. Both would be like infinitely better players. But I don't think it's quite there with Castle on the offensive end to make it worthy of a top 6 pick to add him to the mix. Again, all of this could be proven wrong. We can only go on what we know about guys right now. But I just don't know if the 3-point juice is there from Castle, and I think you have to prioritize that if you're building around Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, and RJ Barrett. You just have to have shooting. It's 2024. We can't have teams out there rolling 2 non-shooters on the floor. It's just not tenable in today's NBA. You got to have viable shooting everywhere. You got to make defenses think and worry and sort of calculate where their help is coming from, how they're sending to the ball, who they're rotating off of, who they're leaving open, where they're funneling open shots to. And I think all too often, if Stefon Castle's on this team, it'll be at him where it funnels to. And I just don't know if he's got the juice to knock him down. Another comp was Anthony Black, who I think his lack of shooting puts him very much behind the 8 ball as far as a fit with that Magic team and with any team. Guards who can't shoot, it's a really tough thing to square. And again, it's not that guys can't learn to shoot, but more often than not, like, we don't see ridiculous jumps and leaps from guys from college to the pros. There are lots of indicators there. And, you know, I don't think you can bank on sort of outlier once in a lifetime or once in a decade shooting development to be the thing that saves a draft pick. And so I think Stefon Castle and Donovan Clingan, both interesting players, probably both going to be very long time pros. Just don't know if they're worth the top 6 pick for the Raptors, if they're in fact there. And I'd much rather see them go for one of those wing types, a Risa Shea, a Ron Holland, for example, or some of the other guys we'll talk about. There's some guard types who might be in the top 6 that we'll talk about on tomorrow's show once we reconvene here on the pod. Actually, tomorrow's going to be 2 episodes. We'll do 2 drafty episodes. We'll go through 3 guard prospects and 3 wing prospects who all could be in that top 6 range as we continue to fantasize about having a top 6 draft pick. That's very, very fun, isn't it? We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you again on Thursday with a double shot episodes. Till then, have a wonderful rest of your day. So subscribe, follow, rate, review, tell a friend. Always appreciate when you support the show, however you support the show, and keep on enjoying the playoffs. We'll talk to you again on Thursday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye.